Alright, hello everyone out there. This is Squire. Start doing my new um, series. Basically, we're going to talk about some deck lists for a little while. It was difficult for me for a while to come up with a deck list that I felt like was going to be somewhat viable with the amount of cards that were spoiled. I still feel like the ones I put together probably are going to change when we do get the final card list, final card count. Other things we have to talk about today are the some of the card previews that came out, and so we'll get to that towards the end of the stream. And then if anyone's online, I can take some questions. Right now we don't have anyone on, but hopefully that'll change in the future as I start doing these more and more regularly. I plan on doing these on Fridays around 8 o'clock Central Time. This will probably also transition once the game goes live to my draft day, my free draft day. So this will probably be when I'll do my draft. Then I'll go back over my draft, and then some of my draft picks, look at some of the things that I did, and decide if I made good or bad choices. My record right now with Magic the Gathering draft online is not very good, but in real life I don't do too bad. Usually in an 8-man draft pod, usually at least I'm usually like second or third, but I mean obviously we all know that the skill level and the skill cap online seems like it's a little bit higher when you're drafting. I've heard some other people say that it varies wildly back and forth there. So, starting it off, let's start with the deck list. So what I did was I went to the Hex Data Mine site. Just bring that over here. Go to my decks, and I went ahead and just made up some decks. Signed in, made my account. So started off with one of my favorites, this White Weenie deck, I guess it would be Diamond Weenies, or we need to probably get a better name for that going forward. But it's just some of the basic stuff. Let's go ahead and maximize this. Okay, so we've talked about the Scrivener. The 1 health that's going to combo with our I forget what his name is. I have to look up everything still now. I don't have everything memorized just yet. Righteous Paladin, so that's a pretty good combo there between those two. So when you're gaining life, your Righteous Paladin is getting bigger. So you can see here. I wonder if I can zoom on this. Can I zoom? Yes, I can. Ooh, look at that. Let's zoom on that website. All right, awesome. Seems pretty good. All right, so gaining you 1 health. He doesn't gain you health when your opponent's stuff comes into play. I talked about him a little bit when I was talking about the what you might call the red. I would call it the red-white humans, but it's really what do you call it? The mechanic, the Inspire. It's more like Ruby. Diamond's Inspire deck. Of course, we talked about Blessing of the Fallen. This is going to be a must in every deck that's running Diamond. Period. This is probably a card that you'll never side out. I would venture to say. I mean, I guess maybe if you were running against some sort of mono Ruby deck, you might side this out because you need more bodies, but typically, I mean, just the fact that you're going to get those Inspire triggers from the graveyard, I mean, it's going to be worth playing this card, which is not really a body, it's more like a board effect. Speaking of board effects, specifically, things that have those effects on the board that aren't a body and aren't going to really advance your game there, I would call those like a buff or something like that. Cards like this, you got to be careful how many of them you're playing. You really do, because like let's say we had Blessing of the Fallen. Let's say we had another thing that gave all your troops like +1/+1, and we had another one like when they come into play, it gives them a specific Inspire trigger. Well, those are all great cards, but unfortunately, let's say that we played all 3 of those constants on the board, and now we're going to play like the 1 troop in our hand. All our opponent now has to deal with is the 1 troop, and all those effects become meaningless for the game. So moving on, Diamond Resources 23 is the general type. Speaking with some of the people from Cryptozoic, they say that they like to run maybe a little bit more than the typical Magic mix, but 23 is pretty well understood. Your resource curve is going to depend on your actual mana curve. One thing that you would do, or that I would do when I'm setting up a Magic deck, is I would look and I would actually put all the 1-drops, all the converted mana cost 1-drops in a pile, the 2 drops in a pile, the 3 drops in a pile, and then everything, and then on up, so that way I can visually see my mana curve and know, kind of get a better feel for like what's going to happen on different turns and how much mana I would need. You might even be able to go down to 22 resources and then get another spell out of this deck, because you only have one. I only put in one 5 drop and one 6 drop. The 4 drop is noticeably empty. I would have liked to have had some power cards to throw in here, but I couldn't find anything that I liked enough to throw in that spot. I felt like everything in here is enough. In fact, you could probably drop the resources down to 22 or even 21 if you feel really ambitious, and throw more in this 1, 2, 3 range, and completely forget about these 5 drops and 6 drops. Moving on, inner conflict. Now this is very important for the deck because this is our only thing to deal with our opposing creatures. Other than, you know, some sort of, there's really no combat tricks in this deck. It's very much play a creature, smash in the face. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. Kraken Guard Mariner, we talked about him. Pretty solid troop. It's going to make your guys a little bit tougher to deal with. This guy, I think, is pretty awesome. If there was something I felt like a decent amount of humans in Wild, I would play 4 of him and play a bunch of humans and ramp up into him, because in this deck alone, I think I counted the humans, and he has like, he'll be a 30-30 when he hits the ground. Now obviously he can be dealt with by murder or not passive, by inner conflict or something like that, so he still is 1 card and they can 1-for-1 him with specific cards, but he's a beast. And if you ever get up into this, like if you draw him in your opening hand, it's not horrible, because you can hold on to him knowing that you'll never draw another one with the way we've designed the deck. So you're not going to get, you know, he is a late game card that hopefully will come through for you. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. I definitely like to have, when I'm playing aggro, I like to have things in that 4 drop slot and a 5 drop slot. 6 is kind of pushing it, but I've said before that Hex seems like a game that is about a turn slower than Magic in general. Living Totem, I went down. This is the card I kind of had to go down 1 on, because he's not a human, so he doesn't help out with that guy. Very solid card though. I mean, you can buff him, get your life drain to combo with the guy that gets +1/+1 every time you life drain. Very, very, very solid card. Give him flight for some evasion, swift strike so he can trade better. You know, give you that like 2.5 feel. So you know, if you were giving swift strike, it's, to me, it's like I look at it as like a 2.5. Phoenix Guard Aeronaut. This one would be more of a, I don't know, maybe a play style, or maybe it would come off the sideboard. This deck editor, I don't know if it has the ability to throw a sideboard on. I wish it did, so that way I could do that, because I am the type of person that designed the entire deck, including the sideboard, all at once. And obviously sideboards can change depending on meta, and usually that ends up being a ratios thing for me when I'm designing the sideboard. Princess Victoria is another card we haven't seen played yet. Very exciting card. Really, really super exciting for me, because this is the meat of an aggro deck to me. It is only a 1/2, but if you notice, she's a named persona, but she's not unique. So you can play 4 of them, and that should be fine right now. That could change, of course. That could be an oversight. But right now, you can play 4 of them, have 4 Princess Victorias in play. The big thing is she gives you that life drain, but you can play her for free if she's in your opening hand. Because what will happen is you'll hopefully have at least 1 resource, and so you'll get that white threshold, and then she'll play for 0. You can see this permanent cost -3. And I'm guessing that's just the one in your hand. So having a 1/2 on turn 1, I mean, it's a lot like playing other cards, and it has that life drain, which would help. Very easy to overcome, but it can push through some quick damage. I don't know. I could be wrong, but plus it's going to inspire your other guys and give them life drain, so that seems pretty good to me. So maybe 4 of is maybe a little bit high, but considering that there's a chance that you could play 4 of them in your opening turn, I mean, it seems pretty good to me. You just need to find a way to buff her a little bit better. Clergyman is a solid 3/2 character. Again, everything seems to be like a little bit higher, so like typically a creature like this may cost 4, so it costs 3 and 1 less, which is nice. So and it's going to inspire your other guys. He's probably not going to inspire too many guys and make them bigger because there's not too much in the deck that it does cost the same as or more than him. So we got 3 drops here. We've got this guy, the Princess Victoria. So I guess if you had the chance to play the Clergyman, you could buff all your Princess Victorias later on in the game, especially when you've got your Blessing of the Fallen in the graveyard. I'm not sure. Of course, it buffs the Legionnaire and the Phoenix Guard Aeronaut and not much else. So the buff part isn't really the best part about this guy. The best part is just his power and toughness, his general power and toughness, I'd say. Righteous Paladin, of course, this guy can get out of hand, and there is a decent amount of life gain in the deck to buff him up. So that shouldn't be a problem. You're playing mono diamond, so you don't have to worry about the 2 diamond cost, threshold cost. Shield Trainer is, he's just a solid 2/2 for 2. I mean, he's pretty much a bear. I mean, he gives you that steadfast, so you have a blocker, after you've just attacked, which is nice, especially when you have something with evasion. So you could get that steadfast maybe for your living totem. Let's see, could that happen? Equal to or greater than. So yeah, living totem could get steadfast right off of that. Although I think it can. Can it give it to it? Yeah, it can give it to itself, but that makes it a little bit quicker and you don't have to pay for it. So that's always nice. Cards I would like to see more of for this archetype, maybe a little bit more removal, obviously, but removal seems to be very light in the format, except for in Ruby, and somewhat in Blood. But right now, that's pretty much what it is. It'd be nice, I guess. Removing constants from the board is not something that Diamond's going to have right now, or at least I haven't seen anything. I believe that's, what is that in? Is that in Sapphire maybe? I can't remember right now. So that is that deck. Pretty straightforward, general, play lots of troops really fast. Hope your opponent can't come back, and then if they do stabilize the late game, hope that you draw your late game bomb. Of this Phoenix Guard Aeronaut or the Legion of Adamant. Again, I would have liked to have put in some more 4-drops in here because right now that's going to be an empty turn for you playing 4-drops. You also need to make sure that you're playing stuff in the proper order when you're playing with all these steadfast troops. You want to make sure that you're playing things so that way every consecutive troop is going to get as many steadfast triggers as possible. So moving on, let's go to another deck. Alright, so where is my thing? Deck builder, decks. I think I can go here, maybe I'll find it. My decks. So more than likely, a deck that I will probably be playing. I've got it private right now, but I'll turn it on. Of course, you can find me in the Hex Data Mine under Aaron Squire, so if you're looking for these decks later, I'm going to leave them up for quite a while. I don't know if they have a limit. I know on tcgpro.com I can only have like 8 decks, so I don't know if they have a limit on the amount of decks I can have under my profile. I guess I'm going to find out. I do love building decks. I love being that Johnny player trying to find new things. But anyway, so this is the typical control deck build. This is a Blood Sapphire deck. Of course, Sapphire being our control color, and Blood is turned into the kill everything color. So right now, with the spoilers, this is, a lot of these things are going to change. Anything with dual colors is going to add on the new resource, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. But I've got the split. I just basically looked at the Blood cards was about 44, Sapphire was about 16. Well, I mean, I guess it's counting my resources, so that should probably be more like 30. No, it should be 29. That should be 29 Blood cards. I think it's counting my resources for some reason there, or it might be counting. I don't know. It's counting something funny there. That doesn't seem quite right. But running the Bone Warrior. So what Bone Warrior is going to do for us is he's going to block those early threats from that White Weenie player. Or from the Ruby Mono Ruby player. I mean, he's going to try to absorb some of that damage so it doesn't go through to us. Another thing that's nice about him is, and I believe this is what's going to happen, is when we play our Blood Sweep, he will simply turn into a pile of bones. Of course, people were having fits with this at Gen Con because he would just simply die and go to the graveyard and not have that pile of bones out, but that should be fixed. So all things being equal, that is going to be an excellent card, and he's not going to be great for the attack, but that's basically his job, is to make sure it is that we can survive long enough to take over the board state and get card advantage with this deck. Moving on, Corrupt Harvester is going to get us some life back and also be a good blocker. Decent on the offense for us, a 3/3. It's on the ground, no evasion. It would have been nice. It's always nice to have evasion with a blue or a sapphire deck. The life drain is going to keep us in positive numbers, and it's also going to feed our card advantage when we get our constant that allows us to draw cards out. Counter magic is, of course, a must. Again, with another thing with anytime you're playing counter magic, you need to really ask yourself, every time it is that your opponent is playing a spell, the big question on your mind should be, I can counter this right now, but is there something else? First of all, is there something else in their deck that I probably fear more? And second of all, can I deal with this threat in another way? And the third thing is this even really a threat? So for instance, going back to that mono diamond deck that we just talked about, some of those constants where if it's going to buff all the troops, if you're going to destroy all the troops anyways, that constant's not going to do a lot for that player, because you just took care of the actual threat portion of that combo. So you don't really need to counter that. You probably need to counter, the big fatty troop, that 30/30 troop. That's a counterable card that you need to deal with in that way. So counter magic, big card. Counter magic, a lot of people, like early on in my Magic career, as I was playing a lot younger, it was the most annoying thing for me was counterspell. 2 blue counterspell was the bane of my existence, because it was just frustrating that someone could simply pay 2 mana and say no to almost any card in the game. And that's why it is that I think that Wizards has kind of gone away from a lot of that. A lot of the newer counterspells are costed a little bit higher, or they have other drawbacks if they're costed lower, or they're other things. I think what does need to happen, though, is we need to get something that says counter target non-troop spell. That needs to happen. That's definitely, I could see that being a true 2 casting cost, converted mass casting cost, and it not being a huge problem. So I hope that happens, but if not, it's not a big deal. Right now, it looks like they're trying to make this more creature-based anyways, which is fine. We still have the sweep to take care of a lot of those creatures. So again, speaking of which, moving on to the sweep, here's our extinction, destroy all troops. So this should give us card advantage. This is one of the things where you really got to hold off, and you got to choose when you're going to do it, because just because you can cast a card doesn't mean you should cast a card. You look at your life total, you look at what your opponent's playing, like with White Weenie, I keep saying White Weenie, but the Diamond deck that we just played against, for instance, you can look at what's on the board, say, okay, he's got a definite this much damage coming through. What other buffs could he have in his deck to push some more damage through? If you don't feel like it's a lot, which it typically isn't, might be a point or two here or there, and you're at like, let's say you're at 12 life and he's got 5 points of damage coming through to you, you probably want to draw him out one more turn, take it to the limit, just one more turn, and then use Extinction, because even if he, and you of course you're looking at cards in your opponent's hand too, even if he casts a card on the next turn, it's going to have it's going to have Summoning Sickness. I think they call it something different in this game, but looking at a red deck on the other hand, a Ruby deck, and you're at 12 life and he has 5 damage coming through, you probably want to cast it that turn, because you need to avoid as much damage as possible, because you have no idea. I mean, you could look, if he has 3 cards in hand, those could all be burn spells, and especially the way things are with the escalation card, burn, or is it burn? Or is it, oh gosh, they make me look, I have to look it up. I don't want this to be wrong. I have to look it up now. Let's see, what is it? Cost 2, there's burn. Yeah, burn, it's not burn, it's the escalation card. Rage Fire. So if they have Rage Fire in hand and you've already seen Rage Fire 1 or 2 times, you know that Rage Fire the next time is going to be like 8. Because it's 2, 4, 8. Yeah, the next time is going to be 8. So if he's dealing 4 damage, 5 damage to you, and you're at 12, that's going to put you to 7, which puts you within Rage Fire range. That's not a place you want to be. So you want to sweep those guys out and keep yourself at that 12 life. So again, knowing the decks your opponent's playing, that is a big deal when you're playing any type of control deck in general. Alright, so going back, let's see, am I still on the deck I'm on? No, my deck. I need to go back to my deck. So we were talking about the extinction. Again, it's a turn slower, so you're going to need to hold out a little bit longer than your typical other MMO or other card games. My decks. Here we go. And I will unprivate this after this thing, so you guys can take a look at it as well. See some of my decisions. Should be coming up here in a second, hopefully. Come on. Is it going to come up? Well, I have to refresh the page. I might have to refresh the page. Let's refresh the page. Come on. Come on. Okay, well, it doesn't seem like... Oh, yeah, that's why I have a Ruby turned on. I need to turn that off. Alright, yeah, there's no Ruby cards in my Blood Sapphire deck, yeah. Alright, so moving on. Pact of Pain. This is the one that we need to have some life gain in the deck to really make sure that we can use it effectively, I feel. Some people may not. I guess you don't necessarily need it, but something that I would definitely want to have in the deck, personally. I'm not sure the exact ratios you would want to run. This, again, is another constant, so it's a card that's not going to kill anything. It's going to draw you cards, give you card advantage over your opponent, and that's really where you want to be. So maybe a 3 of should be fine for this. I don't know if I would play 4. You're going to have other cards that also draw you cards as well. On top of that, one of my other favorites, the Shadow Grove Witch. This is a card that can completely invalidate a troop in your opponent's hand. If it reduces their toughness to 0, they can basically cast them and they'll die right away. I'm not sure if any of their triggers will go on the stack, like if it's a come into play ability or exactly how what do you call it? It's what are those called? State-based effects work in Hex right now. So just so you're aware, state-based effects don't use the stack in Magic the Gathering. They are effects that basically whenever they happen, there's nothing you can do to interrupt them. So a lot of times, like if you have 0 health, the state-based effects say that creature has to die, and there's nothing, you can't like pump the creature in response or anything else. If he's already at 0 health and you've already let whatever effect is resolve. So he's coming in if he's coming in into play as a 0, state-based effects would take effect, and he would die immediately. Although I think that because he did come into play, if he had a come into play ability, it would go ahead and trigger, and then he would die. Because the ability would go on the stack, so he would die first, and then the ability would go off. So that should be how it works if they're running off that same model of state-based effects. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Vampire King. This is another one that people have talked up a lot. You basically take your opponent's stuff, and with the murder, I think did I already skip over murder? Yeah, I must have. So murder is going to allow you to kill your opponent's stuff, and then Vampire King is going to let you take it from them. So, I mean, that's card advantage right there. I mean, I'm going to take that troop from them. So, again, going back to our last example with that, your opponent, it's late in the game, you've already swept your opponent out, you have a Vampire King in play, you've got a murder in hand in case your opponent plays something, they top deck that 30-30 guy, and then all of a sudden you murder it and then take control of it. And it becomes a vampire, which is, I guess, thematic. if you're putting it into play under your control, it'll be interesting. I guess it has to die, so it would go to the graveyard. So it would actually do a check on your deck for that specific one. And he would look for how many humans are in your deck, and then you would come into play with the correct power and toughness. So that may not be great, although you would still kill the creature. I don't know if this Shadow Grove Witch is probably not a human. Zarlock, the Bloodlord, is not a human. I don't think I'm running any humans in here, but I mean, that's something. Well, maybe this guy is. Nope, he's just a necrotic warlock. So I mean, it's not a big deal. You would still kill the troop, but you know, again, we're talking about other bombs like the red dragon, the green dragon, the blue dragon from set 2. Taking those from your opponent is going to be a big deal. I would also consider running a one of the blue dragon in here. This is going to be more of a troop-based control deck, not really so much a I'm going to stop everything you do control deck right now, but it's not tempo either. So it doesn't have a lot of the flyers or any of that. Here we go. There we go. The Broodlord. Again, you know, just again trade for trade. You know, with this guy, he's going to destroy a creature when he comes into play. So just another great creature. There's going to be a lot of quick creatures, especially with those red decks. I mean, he's going to deal well with those. I mean, of course, you have to cast him. He's a 4-drop. I really like the way my curve turned out on this. I went with 26 land. Let's see, 15. I believe it was 26. No, I went with 27 land. I went one higher because of the typical thing that in Hex where you can play more resources. It's not so detrimental. The creature I might, the champion I might play with this. Well, I guess I can go back to the diamond deck. The champion I would play with that one is obviously the one. I forget what her name is, but basically she costs 5 charge counters, and you put a 3/3 into play. It's a human. It would have gotten Inspire from everything. But on this deck, I would probably consider playing the one that gives all your guys flying. So you could give everything in the deck some sort of evasion. Vampire King already has flying, but everything else doesn't have flying. So flying would definitely be a good thing to have in here, especially if you're gonna with the tempo deck. That's definitely going to be out there. The mono blue tempo deck or mono sapphire tempo deck. Another champion I would consider playing is the one that costs 2, and I gain a life and my opponent loses a life. That's like a slow thing. I mean, that I feel like is more for a true control deck, and right now we don't have enough cards to do the true control deck. I mean, we're going to get a lot of trades and card advantage by just trying to kill our opponent's stuff, especially when you've got the Broodlord. I believe I've got 3 of him in here. You might go up to 4, but the Vampire King's so good, and you got the Witch. I mean, I guess you could go up to 4 of these and maybe 1 less Witch, because the Witch is random and she's a little bit of a smaller body, so I probably should have done that. Other than that, I mean, the deck is what it is. I mean, I think it should do pretty well as it is. What else? Let's go. I think I'll go ahead and just quickly talk about the deck from yesterday that we brought up with the combo. My decks. This is a Sapphire Wild deck. But again, it's just basically going to try to cast this Eye of Creation for a lot. And it plays a lot of 1 through 3 drops, except for this Archmage, which is going to get you some more card advantage. You're going to try to play a lot of Chronic Madness. Pack Raptor is going to be in there to, he can set up some blocks and things for you, so that way you can hopefully get there. Because he's going to get pretty big. You're going to throw more of them in the deck. And you're going to play a lot of them with. If you can play a second Eye of Creation, the game should be pretty well in hand. Sensei the Milky Eye is going to give you that card advantage to draw. Peak is going to hopefully set up your Eye of Creation. And it's a quick action, so you can do it at the end of your opponent's turn, which is pretty good. Alright, so let's move on here. So, Alright, so that is that. We're going to go over some of the released cards for today off of the Hex TCG Pro site. So first of all, we've got this Runic Monolith. Exhausted Troop. This artifact can't ready during your next ready steps. Control item. For 2, it's pretty cheap. I like that. It's definitely a card you may consider using in your dwarf deck, where you need to have lots of artifacts in play to get something to happen. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm looking at the PvE gear. Target troop can't ready. That's pretty good. I like that. The Fang of Zintoth. Vestments of the Ancients. Artifact enters play if you pay 4 or less to play your next artifact or dwarf this turn. So yeah, that definitely is playing into that dwarfy kind of feel of the deck. Overall, I mean, in this format, it might be pretty good. If it was played in Magic, I don't think it would be very playable. But the big thing is I guess it gives you every other turn you're going to get rid of one of your opponent's attackers, which is nice, or blockers potentially. If you're going to be a little bit more aggressive, you could play it in a control deck, so I could throw it into that control deck that I was just mentioning, but I feel like it might more or less come off the sideboard, and if anything, it'd be a 2 of maximum. So on to the more exciting card. So I expected hopefully to see dual resources, but Cryptozoic took it one further, and they basically made a 5-color resource. The drawback to this, you're going to get a charge counter for it when you play it. 2 drawbacks to this. The first one is it comes into play and it doesn't generate any resources for you. So you have to wait a turn for the resource, which if you're playing some sort of tempo or something like that, that could be a huge problem for you. However, if you're playing the Ruby Diamond Humans from the campaign, or from the, not from the campaign, from the starter decks when we were at Gen Con, this will work fine for that deck because there's a lot of high costing things anyways, and you get to choose when you're playing it tapped anyways. So the other big drawback to me is you have to include that color in your deck. So as we get more and more resources, you have to have those basic resources in the deck. So it's not like if I am only splashing a color and we get a dual resource as well, I can play 4 of that dual resource, 4 of this, and then single out a color of the other resource. I have to play at least 1 resource of the other one, which I guess isn't a huge drawback, but it is a drawback, especially if you're going to try to play some sort of 5-color monstrosity right now. This makes that somewhat possible, but it's going to be incredibly clunky still, I'd say. It's going to be very difficult to activate. I mean, this isn't like going back to when I played Kithkin and you had what was it called, Reflecting Pool, which you could turn on with up to basically there was a card that would come into play for each color, and it would get 2 charge counters, which you could use those charge counters once to for any color you wanted. So you had Reflecting Pool, which would allow you to use a color you could produce. So because you could produce those colors, it turned Reflecting Pool on, and which came into play untapped as well. So you could play 4 from each of the colors for those. So you could play whatever, 4, 8, 12. You could play 20 and then play 4 Reflecting Pools for 24 land, and your Reflecting Pools were going to get turned on. However, that'd be a lot of cards coming into play tapped, so that would be a problem. But typically, I mean, it was really easy to turn a Reflecting Pool on, and there wasn't as much drawback. There's a little bit of a drawback with this. You know, it remains to be seen if it's enough of a drawback, because whenever we see dual resources, that's what you want to see. They need to be less consistent than someone that's going to run a mono resource. We can't make you really want to make it so it is that if someone's running 2 or 3 different colors, you don't want to make it too consistent for them, because then you're not really playing a game of 5 different colors at that point. You're playing a game of like basically 2 sides, and you don't want to have that. But I think it's balanced as it is right now. It remains to be seen if it's going to be too much for the format. Right now, it's the only card that is dual resource. It's the only resource card we've seen besides basic resources. Um, yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting to see this because it's going to make that stuff viable. Another thing that's interesting is one of the biggest walls in Magic the Gathering is building up your resources. Like if you want to play Modern, I recently had some friends that decided to get into Modern, and the first thing I said to them was, okay, well, what decks do you want to play? And then when they decide they want to play on certain decks, I said, okay, well, the resources that you need to get for this are like $40 for each card. And, you know, that's quite a setback for people because, I mean, you need 4 of each of those, and so that's 40, 80, $160 for 4 cards. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. And so by going in this route, I mean, we're not sure what the rarity is going to be on this. This seems like this would be more of like an uncommon rarity, but it might be a rare. Hopefully it's not mythic. It would be. I don't see a reason for that because this is a definite 4 of in any deck that's going to run dual resources unless it's some sort of tempo and you were only splashing something. I don't know. There'll probably be a one-off scenario where you wouldn't run it, but I don't see that happening, especially because it's only 4 cards. But that's pretty exciting. Some other things you might look at if you haven't seen the Hex updates or you're not on the Kickstarter website. I'll just go ahead and bring that up over here. Come on. Oh, I guess I already have this one. I can't F11 two screens. That would be madness for Windows. So they did the card preview that you see there. They're talking about the double backs and the level up mechanics and how it is that you're going to have full arts. They show you that in a video. I won't show the video. I'll let you guys go out there and watch this video yourself. Very good video. Another thing that they showed was that when you're attacking cards, you're going to have crosshairs, and if you're defending, you'll get like a shield when you're hovering over cards, so you'll kind of know, although you should probably know whose turn it is anyways, but just one little, little nuances. They're doing some fine-tuning there. The full art on a lot of the cards looks really awesome. I don't know that I saw any foils. I don't think I did. That was pretty much it from there. So yeah, I think that's going to go ahead and end our session for the day a little bit early. I don't see anyone online to ask me any questions right now, so I'll probably just go ahead and end this. Post out to YouTube. I might do a little bit more streaming later tonight. I don't know. It depends on when the kids go to bed, and what the wife has to say about that. Or most likely not. But right now, I mean, still looking great. Kickstarter is coming on. Yeah, that's about it, really. I mean, so yeah, this is Aaron Squire signing off, saying God bless you and your families, and try not to rage out there too much. Try to catch me on Fridays at 8 o'clock Central Time, and also catch the Smite, or I'm sorry, not Smite, catch the Hex TCG Pro webcast on Thursdays at 8 o'clock Central Time on the Shaggy TV website, which you can also find on my stream, which is posted there. All right, have a good one.